Road funding stalls again in Lansing, Michigan's shrinking student population, Jennifer Granholm getting cozy with Hillary Clinton, and a tiger on the loose in Detroit. Stay put. MiWeek starts right now.
Detroit Public TV is supported by Business Leaders for Michigan, announcing open registration for the Michigan CEO Summit, November 12th at the Westin Book Cadillac, Detroit. Keynote speaker is Tom Kelly, leader of a global design firm helping organizations innovate and grow. Motivational speakers, networking opportunities, and creative inspiration. That's the Business Leaders for Michigan CEO Summit, November 12th at the Westin Book Cadillac. Info at businessleadersformichigan.com/events. Funding is also provided by Delta.
Hi there and welcome to MiWeek. I'm Christy McDonald. We're so happy that you've joined us today. Good grief, what is going on in Lansing? The sex scandal between two state reps was slightly pushed to the side this week so lawmakers could really focus on a deal to fix the roads. It's really happening this time. And no, it's not. After back and forth all week, no deal. Maybe sometime this fall. But wait, the House did decide something. They voted to investigate Representatives Todd Corser and Cindy Gamrat. So the bizarre saga continues. Coming up tonight, why the latest political maneuvering for a roads deal fell short. And if they can't get a roads deal done, what can they get done? Plus, Corser and Gamrat's jobs are on the line and why one of them just can't stop posting on social media. We have Lansing covered for you. It's all just ahead. Also, a big drop in student enrollment is taking a huge financial toll on Michigan's public schools. Will the districts ever be able to recover? We'll talk about that. Hey, plus Jennifer Granholm, she takes on a new role in Hillary Clinton's campaign. We'll talk about whether it could raise her profile in the Democratic Party. And the bizarre story of a tiger on the loose in the city of Detroit blows up social media this week. We'll talk about that and a couple of other interesting stories that we saw this week. But we do start with the wheeling and dealing in Lansing and why lawmakers yet again couldn't get a roads deal. Let's bring in our MiWeek contributors right now. Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. Guys, you know, I thought something was actually going to happen this week, and then after 2 days, nothing. Nolan, what did we learn this time around?
Well, I mean, it almost happened, and there's plenty of blame to spread around for why it didn't happen. But that, for one thing, they should have stayed. They were close enough that they should have stayed. They should still be in session now until they got this done. Walking away was just crazy. Now they've got to start from scratch again. But as I said, there's plenty of blame to go around. House Republicans, who had been the holdup, went into the session and moved $600 million away from their original position of no new revenue. They agreed to $600 million in tax hikes, which was a remarkable movement for them. The bills passed, the bills went to conference committee, and then the governor walked off the dock. I mean, Governor Rick Snyder, I think, has a lot of responsibility for this deal not happening. He wouldn't go with the he joined Democrats in opposing the $600 million in reprioritizing revenue. That's only $200 million more than they've already done. So they weren't that far off. But the worst part is he joined them in demanding other things that have nothing to do with the roads. He wanted a fix to the Medicaid tax. He joined Democrats in saying we got to kill the prevailing wage petition, and all of a sudden this became just like Prop 1, a Christmas tree that couldn't pass.
All right, so there's no focus just directly on roads. I want to talk about that $600 million existing, though. Where would that extra $200 million come from? And that's a bit of a hinge,
and
right?
This is the problem is that. And this is why Democrats are against it. A lot of that would come out of things like revenue sharing for cities, the kinds of things that we have deprioritized over a long period of time, disinvested in. This bill was going to double down on, and I think that was the objection that Democrats and the governor ultimately had. In a bigger sense, you know. I think the governor's right in principle here. He's probably wrong on the politics in the sense that I don't know how you get anything better out of the House this fall or next year. But in principle, it does make sense to sort of push back against some of these things that we've done that don't make a lot of sense for government being able to function in this state.
But he's the one who's been trying to pull the House towards a revenue solution.
Yeah.
And he got
came a little bit.
a long way. $600 million is not insignificant. Had they not started larding this thing up like they did Proposal 1 with a lot of non-relevant issues, had he engaged sooner, he might have got them to 750, or even to 8.
Yeah,
it is not going to be an entirely new revenue solution. Voters turned that down with Prop 1.
So hold on. That's a lie that's been repeated a bunch of times. What voters said no to was a package that was full of a lot of different things.
Bingo.
Hold on. To pull out the revenue piece and say, well, that's what they were saying no to is really dishonest.
No, you're not listening.
Nobody has said that.
You're not listening. I mean, they did the same thing last night they did with Prop 1, and that is larded up with a whole lot. Voters said no to that.
No.
They said no to the revenue. They said no to all the Christmas tree elements of it.
Voters said no to the package. We don't know why.
And last night, House Democrats and the governor were trying to put the same package on the table. You're never going to get something passed that the voters have already defeated.
Okay, so where does this take us, though? Then they say, well, we're trying to get a deal done sometime this fall. I mean, if you can't get a deal done now and you've had time to sit on it or time to negotiate a little bit over the summertime, you come back and you have these intensive 2 days and you kick it down the road yet again to September. What's going to change, Nolan?
Nothing's going to change. They were as close in this session as they've been.
That's true.
And what they needed to do was stay in Lansing and work it out. But it's going to take more leadership than you're getting from the legislative leaders and for the governor. And the Democrats are going to have to accept that this is about the roads. This is not about getting a campaign issue for next year, and it's not about accomplishing your entire wish list.
Well,
this has got to be a bipartisan effort, and so far it has not been.
It's a bipartisan effort, but you have to say, though, if the Democrats, or at least the Republicans, realize that they have to get some of the Democrats on board here, and so they have to
They need Democratic votes, and the Democrats also now have an ace in the hole in this proposed ballot issue for next year that would just raise corporate income taxes in order to pay for roads. And you know what? If you put that on the ballot next year, it'd pass.
It'll pass.
It'll pass going away, which
is why Democrats are not. It's why Democrats are not participating, not cooperating. They think they've got a campaign issue, and that's what they're writing. They don't have any interest in fixing the roads.
But what does that
tell you? They've got an interest in taking the House.
But what does it tell you that if you put that proposal on the ballot next year, the same voters who turned down Prop 1 likely would pass that by a larger margin?
What it tells you is people were always willing to tax somebody else.
What do you mean somebody else?
People are always willing to put the tax on somebody else if they think somebody else is going to pay it. Oh yeah, let business pay it. That's an economic
business,
suicide.
Not somebody else. Business exists here. Business uses the roads more than individuals
and in this
do.
Package,
business got a giant tax break 5 years ago that has not produced the jobs that they said they were going to.
In the package last night, it was heavily on commercial users. The diesel tax went up twice as much as the other tax.
All right, let me ask you this.
It wasn't giving businesses a break.
Let me ask you this, Nolan. Where does the leadership come now from? Who does it come from to try to get this done?
It should come from the governor, but I don't think he knows how to do this, or it almost feels like he doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, I would agree that I was a little, I agree with the position he took. I think in principle that was the right space to be in, but politically I think it was probably putting the nail in the final nail in the coffin of getting roads done this year, and I'm not sure politically how that helps him or his party, frankly. I mean, they're the ones who are going to pay the price next year if this doesn't get done. No one's going to blame Democrats for when you control both houses of the legislature and the governor's office.
When he came around and sat with Democrats in that negotiations, I think he lost his caucus. I mean, that was done.
All right. Before we leave Lansing, we can't leave the Lansing beat without talking about the Todd Courser, Cindy Gamrat situation, because since we've seen each other, we've heard from her. She came out and she apologized for her own personal indiscretions. She has been, both of them actually have been in Lansing and sitting in the House. But the House took a voice vote on Wednesday night to essentially create a committee to look into their alleged misconduct, which could bring them somewhere down the road to eventually their removal. Todd Courser can't stay off social media. This is a guy who cannot,
something wrong with that guy.
Cannot keep his mouth shut. And I have to quote, he did say, quote, "If you call effective standing and voting, as I said I would vote in my campaign and amassing one of the best conservative voting records in recent memory, then in my record of liberty votes and sponsored legislation stands on his own merits," meaning he's still done his job. So you can be mad about what he did in his personal life, but that he's still really doing his job.
His personal life has nothing to do with this. No. Did he misuse the resources of his office. And if you look at, if you go to debtnews.com, we have Gamrat's statement and the tape recordings that we got that were made by the aides. And I mean, she lied about everything. Point by point by point, what she said in that press conference wasn't true. And the aides are now all standing up and saying, we were told to do this, you know, we were pressured to do this, we were fired because we didn't do this. I don't see where her defense comes from, where their defense comes from.
Has this turned into so much of a distracting sideshow that things can't get done, or do you think that people can just kind of put this aside?
I mean, you know, it's an interesting question. I do wonder how much the leadership might be distracted by the idea that, look, you've got to do something about this. Certainly, you want to quiet them down and get them off television and social media so that the attention in Lansing is not on them, but is on some of the issues. But you know, there's a process they got to follow. The decent thing for these two to do would be to go away, resign, and go do something else. But short of that, I'm not sure what Kevin Cotter can do other than what he's doing, which is to, you know, launch an investigation and see where it leads.
But it is a distraction. I mean, at a critical time when they should have been trying to rally votes for a deal, they were dealing with this ridiculous situation, and Corser apparently has a Christ complex. I mean, he's talking about, I'm not going to resign, I'm going to be crucified. Yeah. You know, he's the author of his own misery here, and I agree with Steve. They should do the decent thing and get out.
Apparently, it was reported that as he was driving to work on Tuesday or Wednesday, he decided to play "Eye of the Tiger" as his theme song. And again, it's probably a PR 101 for him to now to stop talking and to see where this all leads.
I can't believe his wife hasn't shut him up.
Well, I mean, hey, you don't know what goes on. You don't know what goes on in anybody's house.
Or any PR consultant would tell him at this point, you are not helping yourself by continuously talking about this and talking about it in messianic terms that make you seem nuts. He's not doing himself any favors.
No, I don't think he would listen to any consultant. I think.
All right. Well, we'll just have to see how it goes. You know, in the next couple of weeks too, I really want to talk about the legislative agenda as well and what we think that we can see happen. Because if roads is the highest priority and roads is the one thing that needs to get done before any other thing can really be assessed and worked on, I mean, then we got some big problems on our hands. So we'll talk about that coming up. But I want to turn now to education in the state. Student enrollment in Michigan's public school districts have dropped dramatically, and that means less revenue is coming in, forcing districts to close buildings and make some other tough cuts. Now, over the past decade, K-12 enrollment has fallen 11% statewide, and the decline is even larger for younger students. K-5 enrollment is down 15% since 2000. Experts say we should not expect a change in this trend anytime soon. And, you know, this is really the story and the data that came out is actually in the Detroit News this week. It was a really interesting article. We'll have a link on it to MiWeek.org. But Nolan, as you know, kids go back to school in these districts, and this is not, you know, these are districts from Detroit. You know, obviously we talk about money problems there, but Ferndale, Farmington, you have a lot of districts that are now working on consolidating, and this is really the new normal for them, I think.
We got fewer kids, and yet we have the same number of school districts we had when our under 18 population was a third larger than it is today. We've got to consolidate school districts. We've got to look within districts to scale back the infrastructure. It's not a whole lot different than what's happened in the city of Detroit municipally as the population has shrank. We're stuck with the same amount of infrastructure we have to maintain. That's true in the school districts as well. There's no way we should have 538 school districts in this state the way the population, that may not have ever made sense. You know, in most states you have county-wide school districts. If we had that in Michigan, we'd have what, 83 school
577.
districts?
You know, yeah, but you always have those,
577?
there's always those tough decisions, though, whenever you hear of a possible school closing in your district. I mean, you have parents that will turn out and say, no, you can't do this. So how easy is that, though, Stephen, to say, you know what, we're going to consolidate a district?
No, it's impossible. I mean, I talked with the superintendent of the Farmington schools this week and asked him about a district called Clarenceville, which exists between Livonia and Farmington. It is a very small
couple
district.
of hundred kids.
Yeah, but it's got its own elementary and middle and high school. And the people who live in that community, I think, would be the last people on earth to say they would give that up to join the Farmington district or the Livonia district. And this all goes back to our history here in Michigan. A lot of these small districts were created out of class impulses, people wanting to get away from the poor, and about race, people wanting to get away from African Americans and create their own places. And so now we're stuck with this sort of bloated infrastructure, school districts all over the place that don't make any sense. But it is really hard then to go back and get people to say, well, we'll give that up, even though now the reasons to preserve those districts are not what they originally were.
I'm never sure that was what the original reason was, but we
have entire cities that were created out of that.
We have the same situation in every little community wanting their own fire department, wanting their own police department. I mean, we built this state up, this region up with this local control mentality and local pride issues, and now we just can't support the infrastructure. So we got to shrink the physical infrastructure, because we're not going to make more kids, I don't think. So we got to shrink the physical infrastructure, but we also have to look at legacy cost and how we're going to manage them. I mean, very little has been done. I mean, Snyder has made some progress.
I think he's made a lot of progress with that.
Cutting in legacy costs, but not enough. I think we got to look at retirement ages. You can't have teachers retiring in their 50s and staying on the benefit system for 30 and 40 years. It just doesn't work anymore.
There's also an urban policy dimension to this. When you look at districts like Farmington, which are now seeing population loss that you used to see in places like Ferndale and closer inner ring suburbs, what's happening is people are still moving further and further out.
And people aren't having as many kids as they used to have. They're having maybe one or two kids. They're not having 3 and 4 kids. And
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say also school of choice might have a component in this as well, as kids can hop around, and districts are fighting.
We've got to be able to say, look, we're not going to continue to sort of grow the urban borders of the metro area, because you're starting to erode the density that supported these suburbs in the first place. A place like Farmington is losing population to a place like Novi or Canton and Northville. We've got to be able to manage that kind of growth a little better than we have in the past.
All right, a couple of stories I wanted to move on that I saw this week. So did you see that Jennifer Granholm got a higher profile position with the Hillary Clinton campaign? So she left the super PAC that she was raising some funds for, and now she's a senior advisor with Correct the Record, which is a group that coordinates and supports Hillary Clinton's campaign. And so do you think the word is on the street that maybe somewhere along the line, Jennifer Granholm, this can boost her into the Democratic circles? You can't roll your eyes. You actually have to answer me on this. So I'm going to start with Nolan.
What tells me is that Joe Biden's not getting in the race, because that was her boy. And I think if wrong?
He was a very big supporter of hers.
Yeah. So it tells me that Biden's not getting in the race.
I mean, so do you think that there is a potentially... Why do you keep laughing?
I'm laughing at Nolan.
Well, I know many people do that, but do you think that this could give her a potential... I don't know. I mean, that she...
Certainly she has to hope that this puts her back in the mix of things for, some of the things that she's expressed in the past that she might be interested in, cabinet positions.
I hope they get her to give one of those good convention speeches.
That might be happening.
That didn't work out the way she thought it would.
Well, but she's kind of circling back around. Yeah. Eventually, she could be speaking as a surrogate for Hillary Clinton. So, what does this do for Jennifer Granholm? Do they look back at her and say, "Gosh, a 2-term governor of the state of Michigan, she could be a rising star in the Democratic Party"?
So you should be able to, and that's part of the sort of tragic narrative underlying this, is that she is a 2-term governor of a state that is solidly Democratic, at least in national politics. She should be somebody who would have gone from that to other things. I think the record of those two terms is the thing that has held her back.
Of course, as it should. But you know what they're looking for, what the Clinton campaign is desperate for, is credible voices to defend a candidate who is been sliding off the charts because of these email scandals that she has not effectively answered, and every time she's tried to answer, she's been caught in a lie, and it compounds the whole trust issue.
The press conference was rough this week that she gave,
and now she's going to do one of her first interviews, maybe I think the only second interview she's done with the campaign, instead of in a format where she could address these issues in a sophisticated, credible way. She's going on the Ellen show. And so we'll get to see her dance down the aisle and, do all the giggly stuff with Ellen, but you're not going to get any substance.
I would agree that that's a bad move. I would agree that at this point, she should be sitting down. Either it should be 60 Minutes, it should be whatever the highest caliber that you think journalist is out there on television right now, and she should sit down and answer some things straight. There is a time and a place for an Ellen interview. There absolutely is in a campaign like this, but I don't think it's now.
That can't be all you do, and it does sort of fit into the strategy, this weird strategy they've adopted over the past week to sort of try to laugh this off and make jokes about it and be flip about it, and that seems to be backfiring.
How detrimental do you think this is, Stephen?
So there was an editorial in the New York Times a couple weeks ago that talked about how similar the mistakes they're making in this campaign are to the mistakes that killed her in 2008, and it was a really interesting look at just sort of past as present. I'm not sure that they've learned enough from what defeated her in 2008, which was the same kind of inability to sort of define her ethical boundaries.
The parsing of words, the sort of fast and loose with facts, and saying one thing one week and then having to revise it the next week and say, no, I didn't really say that. You might have gotten away with that in the 90s. In this internet age where social media is so harsh.
And think back to how much in 2008 the entitlement sort of the sense of entitlement that was around her campaign, that she should be the nominee, shouldn't be questioned in that regard. Think of how much that hurt her then. And again, that's some of what we're seeing now, is this sense that, well, if you want this job, you really got to make a better case for yourself.
You got 60% of the voters now say that they believe she's lying. It's not just, I'm not sure I trust her. They believe she's outright lying. The question is, will they vote for a president whom they think is a liar?
All right,
vote for her husband again.
We'll see. Hey, I want to leave you guys with the greatest picture that I saw this week, that we saw online. If you were on social media at all, you read any of the papers, yes, there it is, the tiger in the Packard plant. And I have to give hats off to the people at Freak, because the headline that I saw was like, can he pitch? Put him in.
That's right.
So it was a photo shoot. Someone brought in exotic animals, and the tiger got loose.
This is an only in Detroit story
only
right now,
in Detroit.
Right?
It's another reminder that we're not an entirely functional city.
Right?
There's still great,
and of course, it happened at the Packard
stretches where you can do what you want.
You can do what you want to do, right? You can take wild animals into a former auto plant.
Why that Packard plant is still standing is beyond.
Well, they're gonna redo it. Can't wait. He's fixing it up, but hopefully not with tigers.
Like the train station.
That's right. All right, and then we're gonna have to leave it there. That's gonna do it for MiWeek. Head on over to MiWeek.org right now. Nolan, Stephen, and I are going to keep the conversation going. It is more MiWeek after the show. So tell us what you think on Facebook and on Twitter. We're there during the week. I'm Christy McDonald. Have a great night. We'll see you next time from MiWeek. Take care.